You only pay mileage for the shortest possible trip? Okay, then you have to pay my tolls, by userneteki1. At my job, every day I have to travel between two offices. I start at my main office, then have to travel to the second office, then back to my main office. Because I'm using my personal vehicle for this travel, the company pays me mileage. Well, there are basically two routes you can take between the two offices. One is about a mile round trip shorter, but has tolls. So I always took the 1 mile longer route and avoid the tolls. I did it this way for a year. Well, in comes the new bookkeeper and she is hellbent on saving the company money. And where does she think all this wasteful money is going? Expense reports, obviously. So she starts nitpicking every report. Like if someone is out and has to buy some pens for work. She goes online and finds the cheapest price possible for those pens, and only reimburses for that cheaper price. It, obviously, has pissed several people off. Well, she eventually decided to target me. I submit my report for 2 weeks, and a few days later get the reimbursement payment. Well, it's $5.85 short. I ask her about it, and she says I've been ripping off the company for the past year by taking the longer route between the offices. She will only pay mileage for the shorter route from now on. And I'm lucky she doesn't go back and take back all the extra from the past year. I say okay, but to please send me that per her I must take the shorter route and that this is company policy and leave her office. Before I even made it to my desk I had the email from her confirming what she said. 2 weeks later I submit my expense report. I reported the shorter route, so the company saved $5.85. But tolls added up to $136. A net loss for the company of $130.15. It's been 6 months and I'm still taking the shorter route, costing the company an extra $130.15 every 2 weeks. I'm not allowed to take Ubers unless it's to the main airport? Fine, by user growth 13. This happened years ago. In Toronto there's a small island airport close to downtown and then the full-on Pearson International. Once every 2 weeks or so I'd have to travel, so I'd usually book my flight through the island airport since it would be cheaper, and my office was downtown, so it took literally 15 minutes to get to, and there's no real customs or anything. You can show up 30 minutes before your flight depart time and be good to go. If my flight was at 1 p.m. I'd leave the office at noon and make it with time to spare. One day I get my expense request denied for the Uber that took me to the airport because it was close enough to walk, and as per company policy taxi/Uber is only for Pearson. This was all over $12, which I was doing for months. Okay, fine. Next flight I booked in Pearson. The ticket was $900 instead of $400, I paid $70 in an Uber to get there instead of $12, and I had to leave work a full 3.5 hours before my flight to make it through check-in, security, etc. to get to my gate in time. Usually I'd be on some sort of call leading up to my flight, but here I couldn't do any work at all. Sorry team, I'm unavailable for the rest of the day because of company policy. Come back and I'm asked why my expense report was double the usual amount I'd put in. It's because I can't expense a $12 Uber to Billy Bishop Airport, and I'm not going to walk for 40 minutes in my suit and dress shoes in the middle of January in the snow. 2 months later it's now cost them $2,000 plus over what I'd normally have spent. Some of the flights in that time were over $1,000 vs the $400 at the island airport. Finally I get an email one day saying I can take whichever flights I deem best based on my judgment, and that any amount under $700 is auto-approved at the island airport. Now I get to eat a nice meal and sometimes upgrade myself to premium seats and still fall within budget. Karen wants me to stop wearing school shirt, so I start wearing hoodie with even larger logo, by user Kyloban4848. About a year ago, I was in a high school that was a little exclusive. You had to apply and get accepted, and some people were rejected. The school required uniforms, which were just khakis and a specific kind of shirt. The uniform wasn't that uncomfortable, so most days after school I would just keep wearing the uniform instead of changing into something nicer. One day, after school, I was at a store near my house wearing my school uniform, minding my own business, when a Karen showed up, yelling at me to stop wearing that shirt since it made her kid embarrassed since he was rejected. After a while of her rant, I just paid for my things and left. I was dismayed to discover that our shopping schedules coincide, and she was there the next time that I visited, and said the same thing. Cue the malicious compliance. I went to the school store and ordered the hoodie with the largest school logo out of all of them. So instead of a solid color polo with a small logo, I was wearing a hoodie in school colors with a giant logo. The next time that she asked me to stop wearing that shirt, I just told her that I wasn't wearing that shirt anymore and walked away from her, leaving her still extremely mad. This continued for months until she just stopped going at the same time as me. Edit. Everyone is saying that she is clearly the embarrassed one and not her kid. Yes, that's very obvious, please stop just commenting that. Edit 2. Please stop asking me if I went to insert school name here. I probably didn't, and if I did I wouldn't tell you cause privacy. Stop resetting my password, by user Ultra Superman 1001. I'm in a senior role at a service desk, and like everywhere else, if we see a ticket come in that has already been done or is a duplicate request, we just cancel the tickets and move on with our day. Well, we have this one user who is a vice president, and they are the type of person who thinks the world revolves around them, so they would be the person to send in a ticket, then 5 minutes later send another ticket, and so on until there is like a dozen tickets in the system. Well, a few weeks ago we introduced a new password policy, 18 characters, etc., with an additional policy that makes you change your password after a reset and you can't use a password you used before, and this was a big change considering our previous policy was no requirements. Most users figured it out pretty good, and even the VP. Now this is where the malicious compliance comes in. With that new password policy, it was also introduced that all tickets must be actioned before resolving them, and you can guess who brought this change in. So the VP went on vacation for a bit, then came back and forgot their password, and like normal they would send in a dozen or more tickets. Now in the 5 minutes or so between their tickets we would get 1 to 5 other tickets come in, and it takes about 10 minutes to go through those. So my team and I went through every ticket like we are told to do, and we were counting the number of times we reset the VP password because we knew this was going to come back on us. So lo and behold, in the span of about an hour we reset their password 11 times. This is when our manager comes in and says, I just got an email from the VP and they say you keep resetting their password. My manager is a good guy and I remind him of the new ticket policy. He chuckles and heads back to his office, and he forwards us an email with the subject, stop resetting my password. In the email it says they had to change their password 12 times and they are running out of passwords they can think of and to stop resetting their password. I reply all to the email and say, due to a new policy of tickets where we have to action each one before resolving it, we had to reset your password a number of times. No less than an hour later our department gets an email from the president that says, we have reviewed one of your new ticket policies and believe this to not be the best use of your time, so we are going to ask you recant this policy. Needless to say, we stopped the policy because it was dumb from the start, and surprisingly the VP actually started sending fewer and fewer tickets. 7 p.m. meeting for parent convenience? You got it, by user brother_p. As a school principal, one of my responsibilities is to solicit parents to join the Parent Advisory Council. In fact, it is written into law with specific regulations as to composition, frequency of meetings, etc. One of the requirements is that the meetings have to be held at a time convenient to parents. A decade or so ago, I was principal of a small, rural high school that was in a town that served as the hub for a larger area. Most parents of the school worked in town but lived out in the countryside, some as much as an hour away. Because of this, the only way to get parents to attend meetings was to hold them right after school at 4 p.m. Parents were either done work themselves, or could make arrangements to dip out a little early, attend the meeting, and get home at a decent time. Particularly in winter, this was important as it was pretty dark and snowy on the rural roads. Partway through the school year the district hired a new superintendent who had oversight of the high schools. She had come from a large, urban school district, and didn't fully understand or appreciate how a rural school district worked. At our first meeting with all the principals, she asked each of us for a summary report of school operations, including parent meetings. I dutifully submitted mine as requested and forgot about it. A few weeks later I got a call from the superintendent. We chatted, got to know each other a little bit, and then got down to the reason for her call. I see from your report that you hold your parent meetings at 4 p.m., she said. Yeah, it's the best time so that everyone gets home at a decent hour, I said. A lot of people up here have long drives home, myself included. She took this to mean I had scheduled the meetings around my personal convenience. Well, when I was a principal, I always held them at night so more parents could attend. I think you need to start holding your meetings later. Well, I don't think parents will attend. No, the meetings have to be open to all parents and held at time convenient to them, she insisted. I think you should start at 7 p.m. to make sure all parents have the opportunity to come. Now, in a big city school, this works fine as most families live within a short drive. But the boss is the boss. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, Not problem. Say, why don't you attend the next one to introduce yourself to the parents? I offered. She immediately agreed, and I sent the calendar invitation for a month hence at 7 p.m. My school was located about a 90-minute drive north of the administrative offices where the superintendent worked, and she herself lived about an hour's drive south of it. She was in for a long day. The day of the meeting rolled around, and the superintendent arrived at the school around 6:45 p.m. in anticipation of the meeting. She brought donuts and cookies and I supplied coffee and water. I had set up the library with a big conference table and seating for 30. No one showed. I suppressed the urge to say I told you so.